All right, guys, it is time for a showdown between Bretonnia, led by the Fey Enchantress, and the Wood Elves, who are going to be led by a Glady, and if I'm not mistaken, I think she was riding a horse. So without further ado, let's jump right into this match and have some fun. So up here in the front line, it's going to be mostly men-at-arms with shields, definitely a pretty cost-effective pick here. Relatively high melee defense for their cost at 35, 26 weapon strength, 28 melee attack, and silver shields on top of that. So they can kind of advance into the Wood Elves, waste some of the ammunition of their archers, and they'll trade okay with Eternal Guard. Obviously, Eternal Guard very good at holding, but yeah, Dryads are going to be a little bit dicey. But again, for the cost, I feel like they do a very, very good job in the front line against the Wood Elves. And yeah, you definitely don't want them fighting War Dancers, but if your opponent does go very heavy with like War Dancers, you're going to have Peasant Archers to really tear them apart. And of course, War Dancers with the dual wield, I don't know if it actually specifies. I think it's just like standard War Dancers and then the Spear version, but the combat version versus infantry definitely takes quite a bit of damage from these archers here in the secondary line. So we also have a couple groups of the Peasant Bowmen with the Pox Arrows. Pretty good against a lot of the squishy Wood Elf infantry. So Dryads, Archers, any of the Archers all have low armor. Even Eternal Guard, yeah, they don't have shields actually. So he too likes to live dangerously. So we're going to be shooting in to kind of, wear those guys down. And if you can get an exchange between Peasant Bowmen and like Way Watchers or Deepwood Scouts, it's going to be cost effective for you. The problem being they have the range advantage. So if they don't want to be taking those shots, although it looks like he does have these Swift Shiver Shards. So the Peasants for once will have a slight advantage in their lives and we'll see what they do with it. Here we have a couple groups of Foot Squires. So the Foot Squires trade very well with most of the infantry of the Wood Elves. They have a little bit of armor against War Dancers and Dryads and things like that. It's a little bit grindy against like Eternal Guard because Eternal Guard you have a pretty good armor piercing, but for the most part, hopefully they'll do pretty well. In the back line, we have 4 groups of spearmen at arms with shields, kind of in a bit of a circle around our army, and these guys are just solid. So if you're facing off against any skirmishers with, they have silver shields on top of that, charge defense, very good melee defense, just one of the more cost-effective infantry units of the game. I mean, what do they cost? Like 375? Well, leadership, yes, and it's pretty cool. They also do have the expendable tooltip, so it's not going to hurt your army, but yeah, neat stuff. Knights of the Realm, you don't really need Grail Knights in this matchup. I feel like they're a little bit expensive, and Grail Knights will, be caught with Prey of Anathrama and focused down, so I think that Knights of the Realm are a good option. They really heavily defeat the Wild Riders. They have good armor, anti-large, just solid stuff. So in the back, we do have the Knights of the Lionhearted with the Fey Enchantress, and I think 2 more groups of Knights of the Realm, 1 on each side. So on top of that, we do have 2 Paladins. So Paladins, anti-large, very good at hunting Wood Elf Lords. If they have a Glady on a pigeon, you can chase her. If they have a Glady on horseback, you can, catch her. I think they're actually faster with 105 speed compared to her 94. Yeah, good stuff from those guys. For my opponent's army, he does have a couple of Wild Riders here in the forest, so I actually can't see these guys. I think they were hidden right now. He does have some Eternal Guard out on that flank, so probably going to be baiting me into some funny business over there, because I could see his Lord, but I couldn't see these Wild Riders. For his main army, a couple Eternal Guards, secondary line of Dryads, which is going to be some pretty good DPS output. Honestly, Dryads will cut through my infantry relatively quickly with their 34 weapon strength. He's got a couple Way Watchers in the back to snipe out my heavy cav, and 1 group of Deepwood Scouts with the Swift Shiver Shards. A pretty cool army for my opponent. So without further ado, guys, let's get this show on the road. So we're going to be advancing here. You can see the first missiles are going to be shooting in. I think he just had them on auto fire. So these peasants are going to be doing their people proud, taking those shots with their silver shields. Definitely very cost effective for me. My opponent immediately going to be switching on to these Pox Arrow peasants. So they're going to be getting melted pretty quick by that focus fire. And yeah, it's going to be a pretty quick explosive battle here as these peasants do get melted. But I do go into the lance formation for the lady. But in this very moment, I then saw that. You guys can see the little red icon. So I was like, oh man, it's happening. So I basically got countercharged very heavily there. I was a little bit disappointed. He nets me down so he can get the optimal charge. But Knights of the Realm, they weather very well. On that same note, the Fey Enchantress is charging down very heroic Bretonnian rescue. She's going to be using regrowth, which is going to heavily mitigate the damage from those Wild Riders. And the 2 Paladins are basically on hunting duty. So I think I actually engage them into this pocket right here and eventually switch on to my opponent's leadership. Men-at-Arms in the front line going to get collapsed pretty bad by these Dryads. You can see the battle is underway. The Dryads and Eternal Guard kind of stacking up there. And the Peasant Archers are going to be shooting at the Way Watchers here. I think these are Way Watchers. And look at the damage. Or are these actually Deepwood Scouts? So we're getting some really good value from the Peasant Archers. And look at how quick they got. Did they just go from like 100 to nothing? Did those Peasant Archers really do that much damage? That is insanity. But anyways. So over here, this is the fight of fights. The 1 Paladin is hunting down the Glade Lord to pressure. The other Knights of the Realm are going to be fighting here, and the Knights of the Lionhearted have arrived, and we are just absolutely wrecking these Wood Elf Cav right here. They're taking a ton of damage. The Fey Enchantress is going to be lowering their melee attack, doing very good work, so that was a good trade. We did some really good damage to the Wild Riders. We're going to pull back when the spears get there. And, I did take some damage myself, but considering he got the charge and the ambush, I think that was very effective. So now basically just going to be using the Knights to charge, and these spears are not braced, so we're going to get a free charge here. Knights of the Lionheart coming in with a huge Bretonnian charge right into those spears, doing some massive damage, sending those guys into another dimension. Definitely very happy about that. Enchantress also draining. We're not going to stay for the long term, but my front line has now been kind of beaten up, right? The men-at-arms are very tattered, so we send in the foot squires, who are doing pretty well. These men-at-arms holding for the people, and the peasant archers melting the Deepwood scouts and now going on to the Way Watchers. So in the back line, he does have some of these Wild Riders, trying to outmaneuver me. They're much faster. Wild Riders have 85 speed compared to my 75, so he does have the speed advantage. So I'm just trying to fend him off, keep him away from the archers, who are a little bit vulnerable right now. So I probably should have taken a better angle of pursuit. But the men-at-arms actually do break through the Eternal Guard here. These Spearmen-at-Arms are able to beat these Dryads. I think there was some support over there. It couldn't have just been a straight engagement. Now I'm going to start chasing the Way Watchers down with Silver Shields, which is very, very ideal. That's pretty much a best-case scenario. But my opponent does collapse the center pocket, so the Dryads are just rushing through, cutting apart these Men-at-Arms, and the Peasants are definitely in for a bad situation. So they're going to be shooting at some of these cav in the back. The Wild Riders basically just waiting like carrion in the backfield, like actual carrion, not like carrion from Tomb Kings, to feast on my routing unit. So some of these spears are being pulled in to intercept. The Knights of the Realm get a very heavy-duty charge. My opponent does use a Prey of an Athrama to kind of pin them down. Maybe he's thinking he can get in there with the Wild Riders right now. And yeah, he definitely is. So Wild Riders get in there. These poor peasants of Bretonnia definitely not happy about this engagement, but I do have some Spearmen-at-Arms nearby. And honestly, they're going to trade upward very effectively here. Some of my Men-at-Arms with shields also wrapping around, going to be trying to pin those guys. But the best thing about this battle so far is the fact that my two paladins, this entire game, were hunting down the Wood Elf Lord, and we were finally able to take it out, which is huge. And he couldn't really get away. The Prey of an Athrama can only pin one down for a couple seconds, so I guess he could have fell back to his archers, maybe tried to shoot the paladins, but man, those guys are good hunters against the Wood Elves. Beautiful stuff there. So in the meantime, my peasants are routing off the Wild Riders, kind of picking on the periphery. I do have a lot of men-at-arms with relatively high model counts, so my opponent is going to be getting those guys and just chasing down the scraps, which is very, very good stuff. Trying to isolate my weak units here on the flank, but the Enchantress is going to be coming in with the Knights of the Lionhearted. Another heroic rescue. For once in history, the Bretonnian peasants are actually being rescued by the Knights. We're going to be charging in there. A full lance charge coming down here, going to get a huge charge bonus. Enchantress Aura is draining these guys, doing some very, very good work. So things are looking relatively upward. Bounce of power is still even though. I have lost a lot of infantry, and my knights are a little bit tattered, but now the paladins are going to be riding around the battlefield trying to pick off the mobility of the Wood Elves. In the distance, you can see this is just so solid. I mean, these men-at-arms, even though they're just being massacred and picked off, just chasing these Way Watchers into the distance, wasting tons of their ammunition. Such a huge fan of these men-at-arms units with their silver shields and relatively decent combat sets, honestly, for the cost. So the Foot Squires and the Paladins are able to beat up those Wild Riders. In the back, the Men-at-Arms are kind of mucking up a lot of the infantry. The Wood Elves do have one more pocket of resistance here. These Dryads, Eternal Guards, and some of these guys are going to form ranks. But I have my Archers coming back. I do have the mobility advantage. So basically my Cap have relative impunity now. I can either go chase these Archers or collapse the center formation. So I'm basically just going to get a free charge into these Eternal Guard who are already shaken and try and trigger a bit of a mass rout here. So here comes the Bretonnian charge. A little bit weird. It was like they're like at the last second, they're like, yeah, we'll charge these guys. But a very big old juicy charge right into the back of these Eternal Guard. The Enchantress Aura is now going to be draining. The Men-at-Arms of Bretonnia surging forward to pin these guys down and allow the hammer of the Cav to come in here and hopefully do some pretty good work. So at this point, we should be able to collapse formation. Everyone's shaken. They lost their Lord. I decided to detach one group of the Knights of the Realm, and thankfully they do have shields, but Way Watchers hit like trucks. But I do get a regrowth off, giving them some physical resist against these archer shots. They're going to be charging in there, just getting Last Samurai, but definitely a very noble effort as they do kind of absorb the damage of these guys. But those Men-at-Arms, the true heroes of this game, in my opinion. But the final battle's underway. The two Paladins swooping in. There's going to be a Chalice of Potion, just a little bit of overkill blasting into those Eternal Guard. And you can see their entire formation is buckling right now. Also going to be getting, I think, an Earthblood. Oh, that's actually my opponent. What does he have? Oh, an Awakening of the Wood. Right in the middle of these peasants here. So not doing the most damage, but that's going to be all she wrote for the Wood Elves. So man, I was really impressed at how effective those peasant archers were at taking apart those Deepwood scouts. That was just, they just got melted. That was absolutely incredible. Men-at-Arms in the front line lost a couple of the engagements, but as soon as they lost, I had the auxiliary troops. I was able to pull up the spearmen as well as the foot squires to kind of fill the gap, and they did a really good job. And Knights of the Realm, I really think that you don't need like Grail Knights in this matchup. I really feel like the Knights of the Realm pretty much fill the same purpose for 500 gold cheaper, and yeah, they just do a solid job against Wild Riders. Wild Riders are very good cap. They have incredible speed, very good at picking apart peasants and low-tier Bretonnian troops, but if you can kind of screen them out and play defensively and make sure they don't, get in their free range, they can outmaneuver you, but it's going to be very micro-intensive, and it's going to be a lot of work for them to even open up like a single gap of engagement. But the two Paladins, also MVPs, the entire game, it was a little bit harder to see in this replay, but the entire time my opponent's Glade Lord was like having to run. He was stressfully microing it, and I was just kind of pursuing him. It must have been very, very taxing in terms of micro and, of course, the health of his Lord to try and get away from the two Paladins, who I think are faster. I think her horse has like 85 or like 92 speed, and the Paladins are 105. So if you're, on top of your stuff, you can pretty much always get charges on the Lord and bring it down quick because she is a large target and they are anti-large, so pretty good stuff there. I like the Waywatcher pick from my opponent. I definitely think that maybe there should his frontline engagement was a little bit blobby. I think just engaging with a couple and then having the auxiliary troops plug the gaps where he lost, kind of similar to what I did, would have been better because his Waywatchers got forced back and they wasted so much ammunition on the peasants, which these were his answers against my heavy cav, and they were just being chased off by the peasants, and I really think that was one of the bigger issues of the game. But anyways, very well played to my opponent, the pacifist warlord. Definitely not a pacifist this game. Look forward to running into you again on ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this Bretonnia versus Wood Elf showdown. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.